Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we're going to look at S3 bucket policies. So we're moving on from IAM policies and we're going to look at bucket specific policies. So what are S3 bucket policies? Well, they're attached only to S3 buckets. You can't attach an S3 bucket policy to a user or to a group or to a role. They can only be attached to S3. Likewise, you couldn't attach them to EC2 or to Lambda. And S3 bucket policies specify what actions are allowed or denied on the bucket. And they can be broken down to a user level. So Alice can do a put but not a delete, and John can do reads but not puts, etc. So they are at the bucket level only within S3 only. It's really important to understand. So what are the use cases? Why would you use an S3 bucket instead of an IAM policy? Well, maybe you want a simple way to grant cross-account access to your S3 environment without using IAM roles. You can use S3 bucket policies so other people with other AWS accounts can actually go in and read and write to your bucket. Also, you might use this if your IAM policies bump up against the size limit. So IAM policies themselves only allow for up to 2 kilobytes for users and 5 kilobytes for groups and 10 kilobytes for roles. Now, S3 supports bucket policies of up to 20 kilobytes. So you might want to use an S3 bucket policy, where your policy is quite a bit bigger than what you're using for IAM. And then, of course, you might just want to use it if you prefer to keep your access control policies in the S3 environment. To be honest, though, where you would really use it is on specific buckets. It sometimes is a lot easier to manage a specific bucket than to go out and generate a policy that denies access to a particular bucket for everyone in your organization. Imagine if your organization has 40,000 employees, they're all in different groups and subgroups and even subgroups upon that, and you need to deny access to a specific bucket. Perhaps only you want to be able to access this bucket because it has everyone's performance reviews in it. It is much easier for you to go in and create a deny all policy on that bucket than to go into IAM and start trying to figure out how to deny access to this bucket to every single 40,000 IAM user within your organization and roll that out. So the best use case for an S3 bucket policy is where you're trying to manage individual buckets. So let's go in. What we're going to do in this lab is we're going to do two things. We're going to create two S3 buckets. One of them I'm going to grant delete access to that user that we created in the last lab. So this user will be able to go in, read, upload objects to that S3 bucket, as well as go ahead and delete them. And then the other S3 bucket I'm going to create, I'm going to deny that user complete access. So no read access and no write access. Now, this presents us with a problem because we're going to have an S3 bucket that's saying this particular user cannot read and cannot write to this bucket, but then their IAM policy allows them to. So how do you think that's going to be resolved? What's going to be won out in this case? And you probably already have correctly guessed that the S3 bucket policy will win out. And we'll have a look at the reasons as to why that is in 2 lectures from now. But you have to have a complete understanding of this going into the exam because you're going to get a whole bunch of different scenario questions with different conflicting bucket policies, bucket ACLs, and then IAM policies, and you need to figure out who has what access, and that is a key to passing this exam. So let's log into the AWS console and let's log in as the root user. Okay, so here I am in the AWS console. I'm going to go to S3, which is under storage, and I'm going to go ahead and create 2 new buckets. Now, I am logged in as the root user. You can do that or log in with a user with admin privileges. Let's go ahead and create the bucket. I'm going to call this, I'll just call it my Cloud Guru and then security bucket. And I'm going to create this in Island, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit create. So it's brand new bucket in Island, and we can see it somewhere down here. Hopefully, I'll just refresh the page so I can see it. So my Cloud Guru security bucket. I'm going to click in here. Now in here we've got overview, properties, permissions, and management. We go over to permissions. We can see that we've got an ACL a bucket policy, and then CORS configuration. Now we're going to basically cover off access control lists in the next lecture. You can see already up here it says that it is legacy. So access control lists basically are as old as S3 themselves, but we will come back to that. Let's go into bucket policy. Now in here, I'm just going to copy and paste the ARN of this bucket into my clipboard. What you might also want to do is just open up a new tab in the console and go over to Identity Access Management and grab the ARN of your user. So just like so, I'm in the console, just need to go over to IAM under Security, Identity and Compliance, go back over to our users, and we're going to click on the user that we want. So mine's called my S3 user, and there is the ARN there. Now back over here, we can basically create our policy. Now, if you're really good at JSON, go ahead and write one out. I'm ridiculously bad at JSON, but the great news is that AWS give us a policy generator. So let's click on that. That will open us up a new tab, so you can see it here. And this is really old school UI. I'd expect this UI to change at some point. Note down here, you've got your policy types. So you can actually create custom policies for SQS, for S3, for VPC endpoints. Obviously, we can create them for IAM. You can also do it for SNS topic policies. You can create these custom policies using this policy generator. We're going to choose S3. We're going to go ahead and allow, and in here we're going to add our principals, and you can basically say use a comma to separate multiple values. So let's go over back to our other tab and grab the ARN of our principal user. So mine's called my S3 user. I'm going to paste that in here. You can use a comma to separate multiple values. So I'm going to apply this directly to the user. I'm going to be using the AWS S3 service, and the actions, what I'm going to allow them to do is to be able to delete objects. So right now, if you remember from the last lecture, my user can read everything in S3. They can put an object to S3, but that's the only write that they can do. They could not go in and delete. So with this bucket policy, I'm going to specifically allow them to delete. Now, where am I going to apply this? Am I going to apply this across all of S3? Or am I going to apply it to a specific bucket? Well, in this case, I want to apply it to a specific bucket. I can click on the S3 Management Console and just scroll over here and grab the ARN. So it's ARN colon AWS colon S3, then 3 colons, and then the name of your bucket. So my A Cloud Guru security bucket. I'm going to paste that in here. And we're going to go ahead and click the Add Statement button. This will add our statement. We can then create more and more statements, and this statement will then generate our policy. So you could go in here and deny them read access, for example. You could do anything that you want. Let's go ahead and just generate this policy as it is now, and it would basically give us the policy. And what we have to do is copy and paste this into our clipboard. We need to go back over to the S3 Management Console and paste it in here. So when using the S3 policy generator, it doesn't automatically attach it to our bucket. It just gives us the JSON. We then have to paste it in and go ahead and hit save. Now, before we hit save, and this will come up in your exams, it'll come up a few times, there is a problem with this policy. Right now, we are only pointing it at the resource. We're pointing it at this resource, but for some reason, it doesn't generate a forward and then a wildcard. So if I go ahead and hit save right now, we're going to have an error, and it says action does not apply to any resources in the statement. Well, I have named my resource here, but I haven't actually, to make this work, I basically have to hit / and then the star, so everything within this bucket. It's a bit weird how the policy generator doesn't allow us to do that, or doesn't generate that for us. But now, in order for this to actually work, we need to just hit / and star, and this will come up in your exams. You will be expected to know that you can't just enter your resource as an ARN and then the name of the bucket. You need to do the / and then the star. If we go ahead and hit save, we'll now be able to save this bucket policy. And let's go back over to our S3 bucket. So we'll go to Overview. Let's go ahead and upload a file. So let's go and hit Upload, go to Add Our Files, and we're going to add our hello.txt. Now, actually, before I do this, I should remember I'm logged in as the root user, so of course I can do anything that I want. So sorry about that. Let's go ahead and log out, and then I'm going to sign in as my S3 user. Okay, so I'm in the login screen, so I'm going to say, I think it was my S3 capital user, capital U, and then I'm just going to enter in my password here if I can remember it. And there we go, I've logged in. So let's go ahead and quickly just test this. So go back over to S3. I'm going to go back into the, let's just go over to my Poly website, which is where I was before, and I uploaded this. If I just go more and hit delete, and go ahead and hit delete, you'll see that I should get an error down here. I cannot delete in this bucket because my IAM policy privileges do not allow me to delete. All I can do is read and I can put. Now if I go back over to the bucket that I just created, so we go down to my A Cloud Guru security bucket, click on properties, click on permissions and click into my bucket policy. I can see my bucket policy in here. I could try and delete this bucket policy, but of course it's not going to let me. It says access denied. Let's go back over to my overview. I'm going to go ahead and add my files, and I'm going to go and add hello.txt. Now IAM will give me the privileges to do this. I'm going to go ahead and hit upload, and you'll see in here we've got one success, and this error is still my delete object error from last time. So to clear that off, I just close it off. Now in here, all I want to do is go ahead and hit hello, go to more options, and I'm going to go ahead and hit delete, and go ahead and hit delete, and there you go. Straight away you can see it's a success. So I'm allowed to delete that object, not because IAM is allowing me to do it, but because I've created it in my S3 bucket policy. So this way IAM and S3 bucket policies are working hand in hand. Basically S3 bucket policies are extending additional access to me as a user, because I've specifically written this policy to me as a user to be able to delete this. Okay, so let's look at another scenario. Let's look at a scenario where we create a bucket as an admin user, and it's going to be our payroll bucket. And of course, we only want the person who handles our payroll to be able to access that. So we would obviously go in and do exactly what we just did then. We would give them read-only access to this, or read and write access to the bucket. But then we want to block everyone else. Now, instead of going into IAM and doing a policy across 40,000 users, let's assume our organization has 40,000 users, it's much easier for us to just block access to this bucket to everyone who is not, is not our user. So let's go ahead and do this now. Okay, so I've logged back into the AWS console using my user who has admin access. Make sure you do that. Go back over to S3. Let's go back into that bucket, and we're going to edit our bucket policy. So it was called my Cloud Guru security bucket. Going to go over to our permissions and click on bucket policy. Then going to open up the policy generator, and I'm going to go and generate a new policy, and I'm going to deny, and the principal, I'm just going to say everyone. So I'm going to deny everyone access to this. We could have a specific allow for a particular user, which we can add in 1 second, but I'm just going to go ahead and say deny, and then you could go ahead and select everything, all these tabs if you want, or you could just go ahead and deny all it gets. I'm going to actually just deny everything, so I'm going to go ahead, and I won't bother you with clicking everything of this. I'm just going to pause video. Actually, I've just been going through it. I can just see over here, you can actually just hit deny all actions. So I'm going to deny all actions. I'm going to go over and grab the ARN, so it's just in here. I'm going to copy that into my clipboard and hit paste. And then I'm going to go ahead and add this as a statement. So here's my principles. I'm saying everyone deny, and the action is S3, and then I'm going to go and deny access to this resource, and there's no conditions. Let's go ahead and generate that policy. Going to copy and paste that into our clipboard. So it's going to be copy and pasted in here, and then I'm just going to do that thing again where I just go over to the end of my S3 bucket and go forward, and then basically a star. Go ahead and hit save. That is now using the bucket policy to deny everyone access to this bucket. If I go over to my overview and hit refresh, because I'm logged in as the root user, let's let's see if I can go ahead and add a file. So let's go in and hit add our upload, our hello.txt, and straight away you can already see that I've got an error. I cannot do that even as the root user. The bucket policy is preventing me from doing that. Now, if I was to log in as my S3 user, of course, I've got IAM privileges that allow me to read everything and to also go in and do writes and deletes. I'll quickly just do this just to show you. So I'm going to sign out. So I've now logged in as my S3 user. I'm going to go over to S3, going to go over to my bucket. So it was called A Cloud Guru. So here it is here. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. I'm going to go and upload a file, add a file, and I'm going to add hello.txt. Now I do have all the correct IAM permissions to do this, but straight away you'll see I get an error, and the reason I get the error is because of this bucket policy. It is denying everything. So what about if we edit this bucket policy? What about if we deny everything apart from let's allow a user? So we're doing a deny followed by a deny all basically, followed by an allow just for this user. Let's log back in as the root user and go ahead and change this bucket policy. I'm actually back over in my policy generator, and I can do it here by adding a statement. So I'm going to allow the principal. Okay, so I've now signed in as the root user. I'm going to go back over to S3, and I'm going to go down to, it was my security or my A Cloud Guru security bucket. Go back over to permissions and go over to my bucket policy. I do still have this open in the AWS policy generator window, and I can actually just go ahead and add a new statement. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go effect allow, and I'm going to go and grab my identity access management user ARN and just paste that into the policy generator. So that's going to be my principal. And I'm going to, with AWS, I'm going to allow all actions, and the ARN is just the bucket ARN. So let's grab that. And then we always do our / and then our star. Always remember that, especially going into your exams. So I'm going to paste that in here. There we go. And then I'm going to go and add this as a statement. So again, we are allowing the principal access to this, but we're denying everyone else as well. So let's go ahead and hit generate our policy, and we'll copy and paste this policy into our clipboard, go back over to S3, and let's update this policy with our new policy. In here, do our / and then in here, our / and then star as well. And there we go. Let's go ahead and hit save. So let's see what happens. What's going to take effect? Is the deny going to override the allow, or is this allow going to allow us, override the deny? So let's log out of this and log back in as our user. Okay, so I've logged in as my user. I'm going to go back over to S3, and then it was called, again, my A Cloud Guru security bucket. Let's go in here and review it. If we go over to permissions, we can see our bucket policy. So we've got a deny, and then we've got an allow. So let's go ahead and try and add something to this bucket. So go ahead and hit upload, add files, and then I'm going to upload my hello.txt. Going to go ahead and hit upload. You can see it's in process, and I've had an error. So why have I had an error? I've specifically allowed it to this user. Well, I've also specifically denied it to everyone else, and that's sometimes called an explicit deny. And this is a really, really crucial point, both to your exam and working in the real world with AWS. An explicit deny always overrides an allow. So if you explicitly deny something and you apply it across all users, but then you specifically go in and allow one user, an explicit deny will always trump an allow. And we're going to go through and have a look at this in more and more detail throughout the course. You will need to understand how this works for your exam, but just remember that if you've got a deny somewhere and it's an explicit deny on something, then even if you go in and allow that, the explicit deny always trumps the allow. Okay, so what have we learnt in this lecture so far? Well, we've learned that S3 bucket policies are attached only to S3 buckets. They specify what actions are allowed or denied on the bucket itself, and they can be broken down to a user level. So Alice could do a put but not a delete, or John could do a read but not a put. Remember, they are bucket level only and they're S3 only. And then crucially, we learned a very fundamental point that an explicit deny always overrides an allow. And it doesn't matter if this is in a bucket policy or in IAM. If you have a deny in IAM but an allow in your bucket policy, a deny is always going to trump an allow. Likewise, vice versa, if we had an allow on our IAM policies but a deny in our bucket policies, the deny always will take precedent. It is absolutely key that you understand that going into your exam. In the next lecture, we're going to look at object control lists. So we're going to go in and look at how we can lock down individual objects inside S3. Once we've done that, we're going to look at all three policies together. So when we've got a bucket policy versus an IAM policy versus a bucket ACL, access control list, what is going to happen, especially if we have conflict. And again, that is a crucial part of your exam. So if you've got the time, please join me in the next lecture. Thank you.